shit. You deserve a fucking ass whooping. All of you, get back in the closet. Go fuck yourself.
How much does it cost for fascism? How much do the taxpayers have to pay for a fascist country?
They're evil. They are actively doing evil. So treat them like the evil that they are.
The right to exist argument has been used now to the point where what it's going to mean is that the Israel you're talking about will include the annexed and illegally occupied West Bank. It's very interesting, the Israeli government has never said where it thinks all of Israel really ought to be and what it would settle for. And it would be an immense help if it tells us where it thinks Israel's boundaries should be. Every other country does do that.
It's time to stop pretending otherwise. It's time to be ruthless and time to afford them the same amount of grace that they give to their Palestinian victims, because they are only going to get more and more ruthless with their victims if you don't.
Mic check. 1, 2. So this happened this morning. Raids started occurring in the West Bank, orchestrated by the Israeli state. They raided Ramallah and raided the currency exchange, basically just upsetting the financial system in order to maintain this apartheid structure, so that Palestinians in the West Bank, even under the conditions that they've been put in, cannot accumulate wealth.
Ramallah being the seat of power of the Palestinian Authority. This is in the occupied West Bank, and this is live. Now, if you were with us some 5-10 minutes ago, you will recall that we were reporting the Israeli military had raided foreign currency exchanges, and this is not the first time they've done that. And they usually raid those areas on the claim that they are being used to funnel money to Palestinian armed groups. What you're seeing now is the response to those raids in the streets of Ramallah, with people throwing stones. Moments ago, we saw somebody who had been injured, who was being treated by the side of the road.
But also against houses, against plans.
He started to move up the street.
Triumphant about this because he is a far-right minister, and he says this will destroy once and for all the mere...
literally point a gun at a journalist, war crime on camera.
Incursions happening in the West Bank, removal of houses, attacks on businesses, even the removal of olive trees and people's livelihoods. And this is again the part of the right-wing or coalition of Prime Minister Netanyahu to make life so miserable and even divide the West Bank into two entities that are not connected to each other and build further settlements.
Yeah, we saw this the other day, didn't we? It's the E1, what you're referring to, the E1 settlement block that was approved. It goes through several phases of administrative approval, and it went through a crucial phase just recently with Bezalel Smotrich, who is the finance minister, but who also has responsibility of the occupied West Bank, announcing this, and he was triumphant about this because he is a far-right minister, and he says this will destroy once and for all the mere possibility of a Palestinian state. But to follow up on that earlier point, the Palestinian Authority, they cannot and would not intervene in a situation like this.
Well, I think they have their own protocols and would intervene, but the primary security actor in the West Bank will always be the Israeli army, the IDF, which is probably en route or already on the ground and attacking these Palestinians.
Yeah, so we're looking at the footage that's coming to us from the West Bank. The live feed was just interrupted, and I can't exactly tell you why.
Wasn't a lot that happened on that stream, but we do see Israeli forces taking over a building.
The Israeli military said they fired a tank shell at the biggest hospital in the south of Gaza. Why? Because they saw a camera there, apparently, or at least that was what one of the groups in the military, the ground forces, that's what they originally said, and their higher-ups then said that would not have been a legitimate reason to fire a tank shell, and of course they're going to conduct an investigation. But the reason I bring all of this up is that journalists who cover this and who bring us footage like what you're seeing right now, it's an extremely dangerous thing to do.
Oh, 100%. I think
Yeah, any of those soldiers could just turn and shoot them at any moment.
really the journalists operating both in the West Bank and Gaza are really...
So, we'll start with headlines and then move on to more specific stories.
Democracy Now!, democracynow.org, The War and Peace Report. I'm Amy Goodman. In Gaza, 3 more Palestinians have starved to death over the past 24 hours, bringing the total number of starvation deaths from Israel's siege to 303, including 117 children. Since Monday, Israeli forces have killed at least 75 Palestinians, including 17 people seeking food. This comes as press freedom groups are blasting Israel for the double-tap strike Monday that killed at least 21 people, including 5 journalists at Nasser Hospital. Hundreds of Palestinians in Gaza City attended funerals for the victims. This is Adli Abu Taha, the brother of slain journalist Moaz Abu Taha.
Take a picture of me, guys. I do not have a single photo with him. We worked together so much, yet I never took even one picture with him.
Meanwhile, Israeli forces killed a 6th journalist in Gaza Monday. Hassan Duhan was a correspondent with Al-Hayat Al-Jadida. He died after he was shot while sheltering in a tent in Al-Mawasi, which Israel's designated as a safe zone despite near constant attacks on the area. In Israel, thousands have blocked roads around the country, including a major highway in Tel Aviv, burning tires, calling for the return of the hostages still held in Gaza and an end to Israel's war on the besieged Strip. The protests were led by families of hostages and part of a nationwide day of disruption. Meanwhile, Israel's military chief clashed with far-right ministers Bezalel Smotrich and Itamar Ben-Gvir about Israel's Gaza City operation, with Smotrich reportedly saying, quote, "Whoever doesn't evacuate, don't let them. No water, no electricity. They can die of hunger or surrender," he said. In the occupied West Bank, Israeli forces injured 24 Palestinians during a raid in Ramallah, which is ongoing at the time of this broadcast. This comes as Israeli far-right minister Orit Struk has called on Israel to start annexing the West Bank sometime this month. According to a report published by the Australian Broadcasting Corporation, Palestinian boys say they have been sexually assaulted and tortured in Israeli custody. The network published photos showing visible signs of torture from shackling and featured accounts of Palestinian teenagers accusing Israeli troops of taking nude photos and mocking and touching their bodies. Scottish police have arrested the award-winning screenwriter Paul Laverty for wearing a T-shirt reading, quote, "Genocide in Palestine, time to take action." The arrest of the 68-year-old took place during a protest in Edinburgh Monday against the UK government's support of Israel's war on Gaza, and the UK public support of the protest group Palestine Action.
He's got the words Palestine and action really big on his shirt, but the other words are small. That's a smart idea.
Is a criminal offense under the Terrorism Act. Paul Laverty is a longtime collaborator with the filmmaker Ken Loach. Laverty spoke after he was processed and released with an order to appear in court on September 18th to face terrorism charges.
Although we have the law on our side, we cannot implement it. So I think we have to change the narrative. I think what we'll have to remember is that the most important court in the world is the court of public opinion. Ordinary people are appalled to see starvation and genocide and the selling of arms to the apartheid state in Israel, and are just appalled by it.
Australia's expelled the Iranian ambassador after its spy agency accused Iran's government of orchestrating 2 anti-Semitic attacks in Australia. Prime Minister Anthony Albanese said that Australia's, quote, credible intelligence, unquote, that Iran was responsible for the arson attacks against a synagogue in Melbourne and a kosher restaurant in Sydney. It's the first time Australia has expelled an ambassador since World War II. A federal judge has blocked the Trump administration from deporting Maryland father Kilmar Abrego Garcia following his rearrest by Immigration and Customs Enforcement. On Monday morning, agents at ICE's office in Baltimore took Abrego Garcia back into custody after he presented himself for a check-in. He'd been free for just 3 days, following more than 5 months of detention, including time in the notorious Secat mega prison in El Salvador, to which the Trump administration admitted he was wrongfully deported in an administrative error. On Monday, U.S. District Judge Paula Zinnes ordered the Trump administration not to follow through with its plans to send Abrego Garcia to Uganda, a country he has no ties to. The judge told prosecutors, quote, your clients are absolutely forbidden at this juncture to remove Mr. Abrego Garcia from the continental United States, and asked them to confirm that they understood what she was saying. A new study finds the population of immigrants living in the United States shrank by more than 1 million people after President Trump retook the White House and imposed new mass deportation policies. The Pew Research Center found a record 53.3 million immigrants were living in the U.S. in January. By June, that number had dropped to just 51.9 million. About 750,000 immigrants have dropped out of the U.S. labor force since Trump's second
Ethnic cleansing. That's all it is. Full stop.
Inauguration. The humanitarian aid group SOS Mediterranee said Monday Libya's Coast Guard fired at its rescue vessel while the crew aboard searched for a refugee boat in distress in the Mediterranean Sea. The organization charters the Norwegian ship Ocean Viking in collaboration with the International Federation of Red Cross and Red Crescent Societies. No injuries were reported, but the group said the vessel was damaged. Before the attack, the ship had rescued nearly 100 refugees stranded at sea, many fleeing war-torn Sudan. Libya's Coast Guard has received funding, equipment, and training from the European Union to crack down on refugees. In a major escalation against the independence of the Federal Reserve, President Trump said Monday he's firing Federal Reserve Governor Lisa Cook, the first black woman to sit on the central bank's board. Trump's claiming she committed mortgage fraud and that he's removing her immediately. Cook is holding firm, saying she intends to stay in her position. In a statement, she said, quote, President Trump purported to fire me for cause when no cause exists under the law, and he has no authority to do so. I will not resign. I will continue to carry out my duties to help the American economy as I have been doing since 2022, she wrote. Trump has also repeatedly threatened to fire Fed Chair Jerome Powell as he pressures the Fed to lower interest rates. President Trump signed an executive order on Monday that would establish specialized National Guard units to be quickly deployed in Washington, D.C. and all 50 states. Under the order, Defense Secretary Pete Hegseth will oversee the National Guard, assisting local law enforcement in, quote, quelling civil disturbances, unquote. Elizabeth Goitein of the Brennan Center for Justice said, quote, having soldiers police protests, as this order envisions, threatens fundamental liberties and public safety. It violates a centuries-old principle against involving the military in domestic law enforcement, she said. This comes just weeks after Trump deployed the National Guard to Washington, despite the fact the district's violent crime rate is at its lowest level in decades. Trump has also threatened to send troops to cities like New York, Baltimore, and Chicago. On Monday, Illinois Governor J.B. Pritzker joined Chicago Mayor Brandon Johnson and other city officials to condemn Trump's threats.
Donald Trump wants to use the military to occupy a U.S. city, punish his dissidents, and score political points. If this were happening in any other country, we would have no trouble calling it what it is, a dangerous power grab.
More than 180 Federal Emergency Management Agency employees sent a letter to Congress Monday warning FEMA's Trump-appointed, inexperienced leaders are putting the agency's work at risk, which could result in disasters as catastrophic as Hurricane Katrina. The dissenting staffers say Homeland Security...
Wait. was this about Katrina? I'm gonna go back. Talking about deploying troops. Fascism. This is the fascism and the downfall of America segment.
Of the Federal Reserve, President Trump said Monday he's firing Federal Reserve Governor Lisa Cook, the first black woman to sit on the central bank's board. Trump's claiming she committed mortgage fraud and that he's removing her immediately. Cook is holding firm, saying she intends to stay in her position. In a statement, she said, quote, President Trump purported to fire me for cause when no cause exists under the law, and he has no authority to do so. I will not resign. I will continue to carry out my duties to help the American economy as I have been doing since 2022, she wrote. Trump has also repeatedly threatened to fire Fed Chair Jerome Powell as he pressures the Fed to lower interest rates. President Trump signed an executive order on Monday that would establish specialized National Guard units to be quickly deployed in Washington, D.C.
Dude, that's how you know Trump is, like, totally unshackled, surrounded by yes men, and slipping into senility when he can step onto the rake of trying to do, you know, a racist fascist move like firing a black woman sitting on the board of the Treasury Department. Like, as a step on a rake, because she can just say, you don't have the authority to do that. I'm not going to step down. All done. You look like a buffoon. You look like an impotent fool who has to bolster his resolve with military force. It's so pathetic.
And all 50 states. Under the order, Defense Secretary Pete Hegseth will oversee the National Guard, assisting local law enforcement in, quote, quelling civil disturbances, unquote. Elizabeth Goitein of the Brennan Center for Justice said, quote, having soldiers police protests, as this order envisions, threatens fundamental liberties and public safety. It violates a centuries-old principle against involving the military in domestic law enforcement, she said. This comes just weeks after Trump deployed the National Guard to Washington, despite the fact the district's violent crime rate is at its lowest level in decades. Trump has also threatened to send troops to cities like New York, Baltimore, and Chicago. On Monday, Illinois Governor J.B. Pritzker joined Chicago Mayor Brandon Johnson and other city officials to condemn Trump's threats.
Donald Trump wants to use the military to occupy a U.S. city, punish his dissidents, and score political points. If this were happening in any other country, we would have no trouble calling it what it is, a dangerous power grab.
More than 180 Federal Emergency Management Agency employees sent a letter to Congress Monday warning FEMA's Trump-appointed, inexperienced leaders are putting the agency's work at risk, which could result in disasters as catastrophic as Hurricane Katrina. The dissenting staffers say Homeland Security Secretary Kristi Noem and acting FEMA Administrator David Richardson lack the qualifications and authority to oversee FEMA's operations. The letter came just days before the 20th anniversary of Hurricane Katrina, one of the deadliest and costliest hurricanes in U.S. history. At least 36 employees have signed their full names to the letter titled The Katrina Declaration. About 150 others have signed the letter anonymously.
And we'll watch a documentary on Katrina probably tomorrow.
At the White House, President Trump repeatedly praised North Korean dictator Kim Jong-un during a meeting with South Korea's leader Monday, saying he would like to meet with Kim again sometime in the future.
Kim Jong-un. I hope it stays that way. I think it will. I have a very good relationship. I understand him. I spent a lot of free time with him talking about things that we probably aren't supposed to talk about. And, you know, I get along with him really well. I think he has a country of great potential, tremendous potential.
A series of executive orders signed by President Trump Monday are drawing nationwide backlash, including a measure that aims to eliminate cashless bail and threatens to cut federal funding to Washington, D.C., as well as other jurisdictions that continue to implement the policy. Cashless bail is a system in which people accused of minor offenses are released from jail while awaiting trial without having to pay a specific cash amount. We'll have more on this story later in the broadcast when we go to Chicago. On Monday, Trump signed a separate executive order mandating federal agencies, quote, vigorously prosecute anyone who burns the United States flag. The order also directs administration officials to...
I'd like to see if that's ever actually enforced. We'll see. It's probably going to be used to weaponize the police against protests and stuff.
Revoke the visas of immigrants accused of desecrating the flag. Trump's order defies a 1989 Supreme Court ruling that determined the burning of a U.S. flag is protected speech under the First Amendment. After Trump signed the executive order, Secret Service agents arrested a person who set a U.S. flag on fire on Lafayette Square across from the White House. The man identified himself as a combat veteran who served for 20 years. His protest was captured in a video posted to social media by the news outlet The Bulwark.
No president can make a law, period. No Congress will make a law infringing on First Amendment rights. I'm burning this flag as a protest to that illegal fascist president that sits in that house.
And President Trump's former labor secretary, Alex Acosta, will testify in front of a House oversight panel next month about brokering a plea deal with the dead serial sex trafficker Jeffrey Epstein. Acosta was the former U.S. attorney for South Florida when he offered a non-prosecution agreement to Epstein back in 2008, allowing him to plead guilty to a single state charge, which ended the FBI's investigation without federal charges. In his first term, Trump appointed Alex Acosta labor secretary. He was forced to resign in 2019 following criticism of his handling of Epstein's plea deal. House Oversight Committee Chair James Comer has also issued a subpoena to Epstein's estate for a birthday book compiled by his associate Ghislaine Maxwell, which reportedly contains birthday messages from Epstein's wealthy and connected friends like President Trump. Comer's also requesting, quote, any document or record that could be reasonably construed to be a potential list of clients, unquote. And those are some of the headlines. This is Democracy Now!, democracynow.org.
So they're still digging in the Epstein files. It's always a handful, maybe 3 or 4 Palestinians who die of starvation every day. And this number, killed by the IDF, seems to keep going up by the day. Total number of hunger-related deaths from Israel's siege to 303. A third of them, over a third, being children. Since Monday, at least 75 have been killed, 17 seeking food. And then Hassan Douan, in his tent. Yeah, what credible intelligence do you have that Iran was behind those arson attacks? I highly doubt it.
Breaking news: Northern Ireland's most controversial rap group, Kneecap, has just cancelled their US tour. Why? Because one of their members is facing a terror
number of years, and today he edits Jewish Currents, which is an excellent magazine. His new book is out now, called Being Jewish After the Destruction of Gaza, and he's my guest today. Why don't we start with this? Okay. You're someone who, for much of your life, like many American Jews, identified as a liberal Zionist, but for a little more than over a decade, or a decade ago, I should say, you did something that I think is really admirable, which I think far too few people do, which is that you just kind of aggressively reconsidered your own views. You ended up believing something just entirely different from, I would say, kind of the mythology that were inculcated since birth in Hebrew school, to believe that, Israel's this liberal democracy, the only one in the Middle East, in fact, that it's played this peacemaking role in general. And after many years of supporting Israel, was there a specific incident that just really catalyzed your change of mind?
There wasn't a single incident. It was more a kind of gradual sense that I was making an argument for two-state solution between a Jewish and Palestinian state, and I was in this position of constantly saying that that the possibility of partition was almost impossible, that it was kind of, the two-state solution was kind of perpetually dying. And actually it was a Palestinian friend who said to me at one point, Peter, something can't be perpetually dying. At some point it's dead. And I kind of realized that the reason that I was always saying that I was always extending this period that it was perpetually dying was that I wanted the idea of partition because I didn't want to think outside of that paradigm, because I didn't want to think outside the paradigm of Jewish statehood. And so I felt that as a writer and as a speaker, I was not being true to myself, and I wasn't convinced. I felt like, how could I convince other people if I wasn't really convincing myself anymore? And so I felt like I needed to just explore outside of this paradigm and look at people who had written from a different paradigm, a different perspective, not partition, but basically one political entity. And as I went further and further into that literature, and then kind of literature, international relations, political science literature about divided societies, it began to seem less far-fetched to me to think about a paradigm of equality rather than a paradigm of partition.
Well, good for him. It's encouraging to see, I guess.
Foreign countries, they said...
This is wild. We have to talk about Trump's senility. He's talking crazy. He said that he lowered a drug cost or something by 1,500%. That's 1,500%. Not possible, as this guy will say.
So on behalf of all the...
I don't really know anything about pondering politics. I think they're liberals, but one thing that liberals have never stopped doing is watching Trump. Okay? Like, if there's anybody who's been laser focused in on the health of Donald Trump, whether that be blown up or not, it's the liberals, for sure.
Federal law enforcement agencies that we're working with, and those that have yet to join the team, we thought it was only appropriate to present you with an honorary United States Marshal Service badge.
Who is he looking at, by the way? I hate when people do that. Like, look at who is... Don't be like looking at other people like, look at what this person is doing, man. Like, such an obnoxious bully characteristic. Pete Hegseth and Kristi Noem looking on. Like, oh, our big boy's getting a badge.
And this badge comes with this little item right here, which is a handcuff key, Mr. President, because you continue through your policies and your efforts with your staff to unhandcuff law enforcement officers all over this nation. And I can tell you personally that they thank you for that.
Thank you. That's beautiful.
You can continue unhandcuffing law enforcement.
That's a very great honor. I'll say that and put it someplace up, which is important. Thank you very much, Gary. I appreciate it. We have something coming up, favored nations, where I'm going to be reducing drug prices by 1,500%.
All right, folks, so we're continuing our coverage of Donald Trump's disastrous Oval Office press conference this morning, and we've noted the authoritarian elements, but we also need to pay close attention to Trump's physical and mental health, because his mental decline and physical decline, quite frankly, were on full display during this press conference, even as he actively tried to conceal it, and I'll explain in just a second. But his obvious mental impairment, talking about reducing the cost of drugs by 1,500%, which is not mathematically possible unless drug companies are going to pay users hundreds, if not thousands of dollars worth of money. Guys, we have to talk about this because Trump is the sitting president, and this comes as there's...
Hey, I mean, what a utopia. Getting paid to do drugs. That's my president for sure, then.
Increasing scrutiny on Trump's physical and mental health, given the visible bruises that he has on his hands and elsewhere. But before we unpack all that, if you end up liking this video and you want to support the channel, please be sure to hit the like, subscribe, and alert bells before you go. All right, friends, we got several clips here of Trump just really screwing everything up during this press conference. But to provide some context, I want to remind you, again, the scrutiny is increasing on Trump. He's the oldest president at this point in his presidency. He was the oldest president to be inaugurated, even older than Biden was at this point in his presidency.
I did not know that. He is old as fuck.
Okay. And he's never been a...
So, who's to say that Trump could be as bad or worse than Biden in terms of hanging on to reality, so to speak?
Beacon of mental and physical health. And he's been seen with visibly swollen extremities, particularly his ankles, and bruising all over his hands. And he's actively trying to conceal it, not just with makeup, but by putting his other hand over the bruised hand. And he's screwing up. He can't answer questions coherently. He can't remember names and places. It's just one screw up after another. Okay, so that's what's kind of providing the context for this. So we're going to go back to the clip.
Another thing, I actually learned this from David Pakman. When Trump has a glitch, he'll get lost in a sentence and then just go, look. He'll distract with a hand movement usually, and it's usually very exaggerated. And he'll say, look. That's the tell. Because he's cutting off whatever end of that weave strand that was, and he's starting a new one. Just, because if you lie all the time, you can just, it doesn't have to be coherent all the time. You just have to keep talking.
In which he's talking about his most favored nation's policy. It's going to reduce drug costs.
But eventually it's going to get so silly that even the people around him won't be able to defend what he's saying. Look, I think it's best for the president if this is what he would have wanted. I don't know. It's going to be a very ugly passing of the reins, no matter if it happens at all.
He says, and I want you to listen to some of the figures that he quotes.
Where a pill that sells in Germany for $10 costs $150 here because of the bad press. And I was all set to do it, and then we had the COVID come up, and I had to focus on that because we had the greatest economy in history in my first term. I will tell you that we are going to be doing numbers on the cost of drugs in this country.
Sorry I had my chat turned off. But yes. Old school RuneScape tonight for sure. Gonna be doing Slayer.
That I'm not talking about a 20% decrease, which would be great. I'm talking about 1,000% decrease. We're talking about
This is not possible. The only thing you can decrease, the maximum you could decrease a drug by is 100%, because you would take the price to zero. It'd be free. 1,000%, they'd be paying you hundreds of dollars. They'd be paying every individual user of that particular drug hundreds of dollars, if not more, to take the drug. There's no fucking way that's going to happen, but he just doesn't understand. This is supposed to be the business guy. It's supposed to be the genius, okay? I also mentioned the hand thing, okay? Take careful note while you listen to his unhinged shit. Listen to the unhinged stuff, but also note how he's actually trying to hide the bruises on his hand and the makeup underneath the hand.
Of illegal firearms. There have been 0 murders. It sounds sort of terrible to say. It's embarrassing. I did this over the weekend. I'm making a speech, and I acted like I was so proud as I said, we've had 0 murders in the last week. And some of these people were from foreign countries. They said, that doesn't sound so good. And I said, well, it doesn't sound good, but Washington was the most dangerous place in this country. And now, you know what? It's probably the safest place in our country. Everyone's starting to come here.
What's he talking about? What's he talking about? So first, again, he didn't give a speech over the weekend. And now he's saying Washington, D.C. is the safest place in the country, safest place on earth. And by the way, there were stretches before Trump imposed effectively martial law in Washington, D.C., where there were no murders for more than a week. So this idea that it's unprecedented in Washington, D.C., and it's a consequence of his crackdown is just categorically absurd, to say nothing of the fact that he can't recall what's going on the previous weekend.
Career professionals out of the country already. They've been taken out of the country, and some are in solid confinement because these were killers. We arrested some very bad people. And
I think he meant solitary confinement. Solid confinement. I think they're all probably every prisoner is in solid confinement, in that there are walls and bars and solid substances which prevent them from escaping or just leaving, right? Solitary confinement is what he's talking about. But again, I can't get through a fucking sentence without screwing something up pretty spectacularly. Here's another clip.
Africa, they like to say, oh, you know, I love black people. And I did great with the vote with the black people. But they say he's a racist, he's a racist. I said, really? For 35 years, a war raged between Rwanda and the Republic of the Congo. And it was a vicious war. 9 million people were killed with machetes, largely. Hatchets, machetes. That went on for more than 30 years, but 34, 35 years.
So Trump just randomly talking about how he loves black people. That just doesn't sound like what a mentally secure, mentally stable person. I love black people. Are you Mexican? I love Mexican. Are you Chinese? I love Chinese Americans. Who does that? That's kind of weird. And yes, he did better with African Americans than previous Republican presidents, but he still lost them by an overwhelming margin. There's no filter between his brain and his mouth. And as his brain corrodes in real time, his mouth spews the most unhinged non sequiturs. Okay. It's not just that, though. It's also the fact that he is screwing up people's names, right? Imagine Joe Biden, right? President Biden screwed up names. Imagine this were Biden, and imagine what the media response would be.
Everybody standing there knows. We know. You don't have to be doing any studies. They should be saying, please come in. Pritzker should be saying that. You know, I did a favor for Christy Whitmer. A good favor, I think, with the fish, the carp, the China carp. Did you ever hear of it? China carp. And it's taken over your Great Lakes. You know about that, right? And how bad it is.
I shouldn't even have to say anything, but that entire rambling, incoherent sentence or soliloquy really felt like it lasted a hell of a lot longer than a sentence. Not much sense to be made. The specific
sounds like he had some DNR briefings before this press conference, whatever this is.
Big thing I do want to identify is the fact that he was referring to Gretchen Whitmer, the Democratic governor, and he said it's, what do you say, Christy Whitmer, Christy Whitman?
Whitmer. Christy. I did a favor for Christy, Christy Whitman. Whitmer.
Christy Whitman. Christy Whitmer. One more time.
For Christy Whitman. Whitmer.
So you just screwed up everything. It's Gretchen Whitmer, not Christy Whitman. And here's the thing. His DHS secretary, Kristi Noem, former Republican governor, now the DHS secretary, she's standing behind him. And he's thinking of Kristi Noem and trying to say Gretchen Whitmer and screwing it up. And listen, by the standards that Trump and MAGA set, this is almost like, impeachment worthy. This is where you invoke the 25th Amendment, right? And boot this guy out of office. And yet here we are. It's stunning. Now, what makes all of this worse? Again, because we're going this by Trump standards, right? Where he's concealing his hands. He's trying to cover the bruises. There's increasing scrutiny on his physical and mental health. He can't speak substantively or cogently at length on any topic of substance at all. What makes this even more embarrassing is how he is treated by his subordinates, who are clearly too afraid to do anything other than kiss his ass in the most obsequious, humiliating ways. I want to give you two examples, starting with this one.
There's no auto pen that can do that, right? Look at that, Pam. Is that a good signature? Seriously, is that a good signature? Who can write like that? Nobody. I don't know. That's the other thing. I assume we're looking at.
They give him a round of fucking applause for writing his name. Congratulations, Mr. President. You did really well with your signature. It's D-O. Remember, no, sir. No, sir. The hump in the D's got.
I think he was just trying to be funny. And, yeah, he was just trying to be funny, and they all have to laugh, so.
Got to face the right. Remember, it's not the left. It's not, that's backwards. It's D.
Trump doesn't understand humor, by the way, so that was him trying to be funny.
O-N. Very good, Mr. President. Now, don't, Mr. President, no. Don't you eat the Sharpie. You only eat the crayons, and that's for dessert after. Good signature, sir. I'm so proud of you, and pinched his cheek. And I wish that were the end of it.
I thought that the deputy badge was more humiliating than that.
Except it's not. Here's one more.
I think Terry Cole, I think Gadi Serralta had something he wanted to give you on behalf of all the law enforcement who are out there every.
Oh my God, it's like when your mom is like, okay, I think your uncle has a present for you. Literally, that's the vibe, man. God damn, dude, he's a child.
Yes, thank you for putting me in charge of this surge. As the director of the United States Marshal Service, it's the oldest law enforcement agency. It was created in 1789. So on behalf of all the federal law enforcement agencies that we're working with and those that have yet to join the team, we thought it was only appropriate to present you with an honorary United States Marshal Service badge. And this badge comes with this little item right here, which is a handcuff key, Mr. President, because you continue through your policies and your efforts with your staff to unhandcuff law enforcement officers all over this nation. And I can tell you personally that they thank you for that.
Thank you. That's beautiful.
You can continue unhandcuffing law enforcement.
That's a very great honor. I'll save that and put it someplace up, which is important. Thank you very much, Gavin. I appreciate it.
That might be the single most patronizing encounter between two adults I've ever seen, especially when you consider
infantilizing
the fact that Trump is the president. Like, it's embarrassing. Like, he should be embarrassed if he had any sense of self-awareness, and if his brain wasn't just. You
know, my dad is old as fuck, and he talked about how he met the cowboy from Howdy Doody or whatever. It was like a children's singing cowboy TV show on the black and white television, and he had a meet and greet with a bunch of kids, and they gave them cowboy hats and toy guns, and they sang the songs together, and they all got to feel like real deputies. And the fealty does not have to come in this form, I feel like. But, you know, the tastelessness abounds. So,
again, leaking out of his ears, he would be like, why the fuck are you treating me like I'm a toddler, getting a gold star for not shitting his pants? I'm the president of the United. Don't you ever patronize. Did you hear the tone of voice that you gave when you spoke to me? I'm the most powerful man. How dare?
What is that where it's like, oh, it's from the other guys, where it's like, he gives him a mug and he throws it out the window, and he's like, don't do that shit. And Will Ferrell's like, oh, don't worry, I won't. And Mark Wahlberg's like, oh, it's a grown man giving another man a gift. Don't do that shit. It's so, like, toxic. Oh, man. The Other Guys, 2011. I rewatched it recently, and it's not as funny as it was when I was 14, but still, it's nostalgic for me.
Dare you disrespect, but that's the thing. They have to do this because he's just the worst combination of human foibles that he's dumb, he's in decline, he's physically unhealthy, he's mentally unhealthy, he's a narcissist of the highest order, he's corrupt, he's authoritarian. And when you put all that in a fucking blender and you get this guy, they feel like they've got to do that. So, sir, we got you something shiny, right? And they're dangling car keys in front of his, and he's pawing at it. I don't even know what to say. Like, that's embarrassing. We might even lead with that. Like, I didn't.
Hear from Ali Velshi, one of the few respectable anchors over at MSNBC, giving a dire warning on Trump's fascist takeover of the United States. So I want to watch a little bit of this clip here, this monologue that he did. Yeah, and then I got some more updates on Trump's expanding deployment of the National Guard around the country, and also some clips of Donald Trump just outright floating the idea of making himself an open dictator. So we're going to get to that here in a minute, but let's just go ahead and watch a little bit of this clip here.
It's Sunday, August the 24th. I'm Ali Velshi, and we begin this hour with a reality check, a crucial one. The collapse of democracy is a strange, almost surreal thing. It can be abstract and hard to recognize in the moment. At first, it just feels like politics. It's messy, it's noisy, it's frustrating, and sometimes a bit removed from one's day-to-day life. But then the guardrails that we've taken for granted begin to topple, one after another.
Dude, he comes in with straight heat right off the bat, dude. He's like, you might not know fascism when you see it, but it's all around you, and it's accelerating. It's like, what the fuck? It's like the universe.
The collapse of democracy is a strange, almost surreal thing. It can be abstract and hard to recognize in the moment. At first, it just feels like politics. It's messy, it's noisy, it's frustrating, and sometimes a bit removed from one's day-to-day life. But then the guardrails that we've taken for granted begin to topple, one after another. A National Guard unit deployed to a city that never asked for it. Key parts of the nation's electoral process attacked as illegitimate.
It's like there's a ghost in your house, and you're noticing things out of place. Your country is possessed by an evil spirit called fascism, and it's spearheaded by literal demons.
Rulings of federal judges shrugged off as optional. Neighbors disappeared into ICE vans. Critics and political opponents suddenly faced with criminal probes. The media behaving in ways designed not to trigger the ire of the ruling party. Each new abuse is justified as temporary, necessary, even an emergency. Until one day, it's not temporary at all. Until one day, the justifications stop altogether, because once power is absolute, it no longer feels the need to explain itself. At best, each assault may seem like an outlier until the day you wake up and realize the system itself has become unrecognizable. Well, that's where we are, right now. It's not where we're headed, it's where we are. The tragedy of what's unfolding and the danger of...
I'll disagree that the system is not unrecognizable. It's completing its final form. which is late-stage capitalism.
What's ahead will be compounded if American citizens en masse, all of us, do not recognize this moment for what it is. Understandably, unless it touches you directly, it's easy to say sometimes to miss what's being taken away. We've been telling ourselves the courts will stop it. Congress will step in. Surely someone will draw the line. Yet one by one, those lines have already been crossed. Just look around. Last night, Illinois Governor J.B. Pritzker had to publicly rebuke President Trump's reported plan to send military troops into Illinois. Pritzker made clear Illinois has asked for no such help. Doesn't need that help. There's no emergency on the ground. His warning was blunt. Trump is, quote, attempting to manufacture a crisis, politicize Americans who serve in uniform, and continue abusing his power to distract from the pain he is causing working families, end quote. That is the governor of one of America's most populous states, sounding the alarm that the president of the United States is turning the nation's military into a domestic political weapon. And he's right. This is not about public safety. It's about flexing power, teaching dissenters and political opponents a lesson, normalizing the use of troops against Americans. In the nation's capital, hundreds of federal troops now patrol the streets alongside ICE and DEA and FBI agents, ticketing residents for minor offenses like broken taillights. Federal troops policing petty crime on America's main street. Think about that. Crime may be statistically down, but intimidation is way up. The police state is here. And that's the whole point. D.C. restaurants and bars report business down by 1/3. What Trump is doing is designed to bleed blue cities dry economically. Meanwhile, red state governors are planning on sending hundreds more Guard troops into the Capitol. Soldiers who, by the way, have no training in urban policing.
Yeah, so the whole thing.
Yeah, hang up your fucking uniform. How does it feel to be deployed into your nation's capital and no one wants to be around you? Fucking hang up your uniform in shame if you responded to that call.
Is absolutely insane, right? I live here in Washington, D.C., and I hadn't seen National Guard's troops until like the last couple of days, but they're now like in the area, in the neighborhood that I myself live in. And it's just like a bizarre phenomenon. I don't even think that the National Guard's people who are being deployed even know what they're doing here. I guess they're going around and ticketing people or assisting with the feds and with ICE in some of their immigration roundups that they've been doing. But it's entirely pointless to have them here. As you pointed out there, number one, crime in D.C. is statistically down right now. It's not like we had some massive outlier emergency that would require this kind of thing. This is all entirely unconstitutional. And as Ali was pointing out there, the point is not to address crime or to assist with immigration raids or anything like that. The point is to instill intimidation. That's the point. The point is to normalize the presence of U.S. military on the American streets, right? That's what the entire point of this kind of thing is. It's a...
Can we just appreciate how crazy this frame is that we paused on? Two headlines fading into each other with a United States Postal Service ledger appearing also in the foreground with a dystopian We Heart DC. When eating out is down 30%, as young fascists patrol the streets.
Power flex. It is Donald Trump trying to assert that as his right to deploy U.S. military on the streets of the United States. That's what this is actually about. Now, the one thing that I'll divert from Ali Velshi on here before we move on to the rest of the updates on, Trump calling himself a dictator and expanding the deployment of these troops. The one thing I'll disagree on is that what we are witnessing right now is not the collapse of democracy. It's the collapse of the facade of democracy, of the sort of fake pretend democracy that we have in place here. And that's sort of a key point to me in my understanding of politics is that we already weren't a democracy. We are an oligarchy in this country. We are ruled by elite, ruled by the billionaire class, ruled by corporations. And it's been that way for a very long time. And so this kind of like a brazen and an open fascism that we've been witnessing from Donald Trump is an outgrowth of that more fundamental reality. It's the entire reason why Donald Trump can rise to the position of being elected president in the first place is because you have people's material conditions, average working class people, their lives are unbearable economically. People can't afford groceries, they can't afford housing, they can't afford childcare, they can't afford healthcare. They're being screwed a million different ways. In the meantime, we have massive wealth consolidation at the top end of the spectrum to the point now where we have like 5 guys who have more wealth than the bottom half of the country. You have this spiraling wealth inequality and you have continued consolidation of power politically as an outgrowth of that, because our campaign finance system is basically just a system of legalized corruption and bribery. So it's because of those foundational anti-democratic things that had already existed in this country that we then get the outgrowth of Donald Trump, that we then get, the spiraling use of fear tactics and scapegoats, whether it be immigrants or gay people or trans people or whatever Republicans or many Democrats as well want to use on that day to distract from, again, those more underlying issues that they're completely ignoring, right? So that's how we end up in this kind of a position. It didn't come out of nowhere. It didn't start with Donald Trump. He's just sort of like the natural endpoint of capitalism, demolishing itself, eating itself from the inside. And you could also make the argument that this is sort of imperial tactics that we've used abroad now coming back home, the imperial boomerang effect. So I just wanted to lay that out there in terms of, it's important to understand that we didn't start this with Donald Trump, right? None of this started with Donald Trump. He's just sort of the more open-facing aspect of the collapse of American capitalism that we're witnessing in an extremely open and brazen way at this point. Now, speaking of that, we got a couple clips here from Donald Trump over the last couple of days of him just sort of like, I guess, half jokingly, but not really jokingly, given what we've seen from him, making himself a dictator. So let's go ahead and watch this first one here.
And they say, we don't need him. Freedom, freedom. He's a dictator. He's a dictator. A lot of people are saying maybe we like a dictator.
A lot of people are saying maybe we'd like a dictator. That's what he's saying. We had another one here where he goes and talks about how he stops crime, and so therefore that makes him as a dictator acceptable.
But then he goes on television and says, oh, Trump is a dictator. He's a dictator. And a lot of people are here. So the line is that I'm a dictator, but I stop crime. So a lot of people say, if that's the case, I'd rather have a dictator. But I'm not a dictator. I just know how to stop.
So, people in the room are laughing. He kind of seems like he's half joking, but this is the same guy who literally tried to do a sort of self-coup to keep himself in power in 2020. So it's not as if like this would be out of the ordinary for him to try to do the same thing, whether it's in the 2026 midterm elections and trying to rig that in favor of Republicans so that they can keep control of the Senate or the House, or, pending whether or not he's still alive, if he tried to do that in 2028. This is the guy who did January 6th. So it's not like you can just shrug this off as some sort of a joke. He also, by the way, is, selling merch on his websites and in his emails and whatever, and has this entire shelf set up in the White House that is Trump 2028 merchandise. And he's had foreign leaders come in to the Oval Office, and he starts handing them this merchandise and talking about how, oh, so many people want me to run again, maybe I'll run again. So, again, kind of seems half joking, but how unserious can we position a guy like this in the first place? Now, continuing on to the sort of military takeover of liberal cities around the country, including here in my city of DC, he's apparently going to expand this to not only the National Guard, but also what he calls the regular military. I'm guessing he means like the Marines, and beyond that, expanding it to multiple cities around the country. So let's go ahead and watch this clip here.
And we haven't had to bring in the regular military, which we're willing to do. We have to. And after we do this, we'll go to another location and we'll make it safe also. We're going to make our country very safe. We're going to make our cities very, very safe. Chicago's a mess. You have an incompetent mayor, grossly incompetent. And we'll straighten that one out probably next. That'll be our next one after this. And it won't even be tough. And the people in Chicago, Mr. Vice President, are screaming for us to come. They're wearing red hats, just like this one. But they're wearing red hats. African-American ladies, beautiful ladies, are saying, please, President Trump, come to Chicago. Please. I did great with the black vote, as you know.
Okay. Beautiful black ladies are screaming for Donald Trump to invade Chicago with the U.S. military. That's the claim that's being made here. He says it's wildly popular. Everybody wants him to do it. I guess that's why we saw clips of J.D. Vance trying to come to Washington, D.C. to walk through Union Station, and people were yelling, surrounding him in a crowd saying, go fuck a couch, J.D., right? Because everybody was welcoming him here to our city. I mean, it's completely ridiculous. And again, he's talking about not just the National Guard, but also the regular military. And honestly, I don't even know what you could plausibly say is the plan here outside of just trying to sort of terrorize liberal cities, or again to do some sort of like a power flex, because it's not like you're addressing crime in any serious way. I mean, you sent the military to LA, you sent them now here to DC. What exactly are they doing to prevent crime, to address crime? Are they going to be making arrests? Are they going to be doing police work? Are they going to be shooting people on the streets? Like, what are we actually talking about here as an end goal, other than just, again, normalizing having military presence on the ground in basically, it seems like every American city is what he wants to do with this. Now, we also have another one here in terms of his brazen authoritarianism. He's signing an executive order to punish anybody who burns an American flag, which has already been settled by the Supreme Court, I believe in the late 1990s, as a constitutionally protected form of protest. And he says, you're going to get 1 year in prison if you burn the American flag. He says you get 1 year in jail, no early exits, no nothing, 1 year in jail if you burn the American flag. What it does is to incite a riot. And this is coming obviously amidst other widespread crackdowns on any form of protest here in the United States. And again, that's not something that's unique to Donald Trump. We also saw this with pro-Palestine protests under the Biden administration.
Well, to be fair, Trump knows all about starting riots.
We had even universities bending the knee and cracking down on their own students for daring to set up like peaceful encampments to protest a genocide that our government and their universities are complicit in. So, you know, this concept of cracking down on people who dare to legally and constitutionally protest our own government and sending them to jail. I mean, this is something that I think is going to be escalating significantly in the future. We also have, again, him on deploying the National Guard to Chicago. He says, I have the right to do anything I want to do. I'm the president of the United States. Again, sort of an insight into what he thinks the president is or should be, basically a dictatorship where he gets to do whatever he wants beyond the bounds of the law or constitution or whatever the case may be. He's the president, so he's fully in charge. We also had this insane moment here in my city of Washington, D.C., where one of these National Guard's vehicles, I mean, this is a fully kitted out, real legit military vehicle. You can see it here in the background, absolutely gigantic. And it plowed into the side of some resident's car and sent them to the hospital, sent a family to the hospital. They had to use the jaws of life to pull them out of this car. I mean, this is what we're talking about, guys. Like, this is just, think about how absurd and ridiculous this is, that we have U.S. military vehicles patrolling the streets and getting into car accidents with residents here. Is this making D.C. residents safer to have these kinds of situations? We also have here an update from Jackie Heinrich in terms of where this is going in the future. Again, this is potentially going to be going to upwards of, as she says here, 19 states in the next couple of weeks. Documents obtained by Fox News show planning for activations in Alabama, Arkansas, Florida, Georgia, Idaho, Indiana, Iowa, Louisiana, Nebraska, Nevada, New Mexico, Ohio, South Carolina, South Dakota, Tennessee, Texas, Utah, Virginia, and Wyoming. So this is what we're going to be seeing over just the next couple of weeks here. Deployment of the U.S. military across basically, it seems like, every major city in the country. In terms of how the American people are feeling about this, or at least here specifically in Washington, D.C., contrary to Donald Trump saying that black women are screaming in red hats for him to come to their cities, here we have about 8 in 10 Washingtonians opposing Donald Trump taking control of D.C.'s police and federal troops patrolling the streets. 8 in 10, again, not surprising. And we also have, again, as a reminder here, something that I think is important, the Democratic resistance, or lack thereof, the non-existence of the Democratic resistance. As a reminder, in response to Donald Trump deploying the military throughout Washington, D.C., the Democratic leader in the House of Representatives responded by saying, I think that the letter that was issued by the D.C. Attorney General was a strongly worded letter. So this is a good reminder that the resistance to Donald Trump, the resistance to fascism broadly in this country, is not going to come from the Democratic Party. Point blank, period. It's just not. You cannot be waiting for any sort of political savior, right? A politician is not going to be the solution to this. The Democratic Party is one side of the other coin, of the capitalist and fascist sort of a coin that we have in this country. They are basically running in parallel to each other. And that's how we got to this position in the first place, right? If Democrats were truly a leftist, a social democratic, or a democratic socialist party that was looking out for average working class people, that was expanding our social safety net, that was addressing income and wealth inequality, that ensured everybody had their basic material conditions of housing and healthcare and childcare and education, etc., taken care of, Trump never would have won in the first place. And now we have this sort of decrepit leadership of Chuck Schumer, who I think hasn't done an interview in months at this point, and then Hakeem Jeffries, who's pushing the idea that the resistance to fascism is strongly worded letters. I mean, these people are not going to save us, right? Any sort of pushback or resistance to Donald Trump or to fascism in this country is going to have to come from mass organization and mass mobilization of average working class people, a mass coalition of people, millions across the country, who rise up against this. That's the only way that this is ever going to be confronted in any sort of serious way. It's not going to come from from the likes of Hakeem Jeffries and Chuck Schumer, believe it or not. Now, a couple final things here. We also had this interesting statement by Donald Trump when he was doing a radio interview on Fox News, and it kind of came out of nowhere. He was talking about, I guess, peace with Ukraine and Russia. And he says, I want to try to get to heaven, if possible. I hear I'm not doing well. I hear I'm really at the bottom of the totem pole. So this is something that's like pretty out of character for Donald Trump, I would say. I don't think I've ever heard him talk about heaven or the prospects of himself getting into heaven. And it's especially weird when you consider that this is coming at the same time that we've been getting report after report about his deteriorating health, right? So there have been images that have been floating around online of like these massive bruises that he has on his hands that some people are speculating is from IVs, where he could be getting treatment. There was also reporting that he got diagnosed with, I believe it's called something, constricted venous insufficiency, or some chronic venous insufficiency is what it's called. So he could potentially be having heart issues as well. On top of that, he's got these massively swollen cankles walking around lately. He has a limp. I mean, there are like so many different things that could potentially be going wrong health-wise for Donald Trump. So we could end up in a situation where the Donald Trump problem is sort of solving itself. I guess that's a way to put it. It may solve itself, you know, before his presidency eventually ends, or before he can try to stay in power in 2028. But again, that doesn't really address the underlying issues that we're facing as a country, right? With Donald Trump specifically, we've seen a drastic expansion of the mass surveillance state working in coordination with tech oligarchs and corporations like Palantir. We've seen obviously a drastic expansion of the police state, now literally deploying U.S. military personnel on the streets as intimidation tactics and to normalize their presence on the streets of the U.S. And we have massive crackdowns on censorship, on the right to free speech, on the right to protest, not just with the flag burning stuff, but also Trump directly going after media outlets, directly going after U.S. universities to get them to crack down on anybody who criticizes Israel. We also have the establishment of concentration camps at this point for migrants that they're rounding up. We have ICE goons, Gestapo thugs running around the street in unmarked vehicles, in unmarked vests with guns and kidnapping people off the streets. So, I mean, with Donald Trump, we've seen a heightened state of our descent to fascism. But again, the final point that I'll leave you guys off with here is that this did not come out of nowhere. And if you aren't addressing the underlying things that led to the election of Donald Trump, that led to the spiral to fascism, then you're not going to be able to address this in a serious way.
Politic guy has the best politics.
The underlying causes. Fascism brought on by capitalism. Anything I missed here? Massive dust storm in Phoenix metro area. Thousands without power. Oh shit.
We begin tonight here with the stunning images, the dust storm that swept across several cities. The drivers suddenly blinded by the dust, passenger planes grounded, air traffic controllers forced to evacuate the tower. We're also following this major change coming to the Northeast for Labor Day. But first tonight, the remarkable images, the towering cloud of dust, hundreds of feet high, moving in over the Phoenix metro area. After an unusually dry summer, this storm swept in, leaving drivers unable to see. You will hear people in their cars narrating how dangerous this was, how conditions changed in an instant. The massive dust storm turning day to night, causing travel chaos, leaving those drivers in the dark, visibility near zero. And then the flooding rains and wind gusts up to 70 miles an hour. Part of the roof at the Phoenix airport ripped off. Air traffic controllers evacuating that tower with passenger planes still in the air. Across the region tonight, traffic lights and trees down, tens of thousands without power. And now the new storms still coming tonight. And of course, this big change for much of the Midwest and the Northeast for Labor Day. Lee Goldberg standing by with the forecast, and ABC's Trevor Ault with the chaotic moments in the middle of this.
Yeah, I'll watch ABC News. I trust ABC News to give me the weather. That's about it.
Very dangerous storm.
Tonight, dust storms and monsoon rains threatening millions after an astonishing and dangerous 24 hours in the Southwest. This massive, towering wall of dust and wind, also known as a haboob, swallowing the Phoenix metro area.
Light rail just disappeared.
Drivers blinded. Cassandra Ravutsky recording this video out her window as the dust blotted out the sun, flashing taillights the only thing visible.
You can see, take a look at these planes that are right here.
Our Phoenix affiliate ABC 15 reporting live from Sky Harbor Airport as that dust wall turned into driving.
I'm sorry, this kind of funny video is just, take a look at this plane that's right here. It's just a plane on the runway, like. Can we go back and see that?
Taillights the only thing visible.
You can see, take a look at these planes that are right here.
Our Phoenix affiliate ABC 15 reporting live from Sky Harbor Airport as that dust wall turned into driving dirt and rain.
It's hard to open my eyes because we are once again getting pelted with rain, pelted with what feels like dust.
Listen to the air traffic controllers telling pilots to stay in the air while they evacuate the tower.
They said that the dust storm's going to be, I got no point of visibility. It's going to be pretty bad for like an hour. We are evacuating.
Not only were flights grounded, one of the terminals sustained damage. The powerful system also taking down traffic lights and trees, with thousands of homes and businesses losing power.
And David, flood watches are in effect for 2 million people, with rainfall rates up to 2 inches an hour in some spots. This region does need this rain desperately, just not all at once. David?
That is for sure. Trevor Ault leading us off. Trevor, thank you. Let's get right to Chief Meteorologist Lee Goldberg from WABC right here in New York. Hi, Lee.
Hi, David. And we're still watching some heavy showers near Sedona this evening. One way or another, we're cooling off from coast to coast. In the west, it's the monsoon pattern, and it's widespread showers, and some of those showers could drop some rainfall rates to 2 inches an hour. Flood watches from California to Idaho all the way in.
I love a bubbly weatherman.
Colorado and some of those yellow areas see the highest rainfall rates. So we extinguished the high heat in the Pacific Northwest, although it still stays above average in temperatures. But when you look at the Rockies, the Plains, the East, 10 to 20 degrees below average. Look at Wichita tomorrow, 71. And the afternoons are comfortable, but the mornings, there's some chill. Near record chill in Toledo in the 40s tomorrow morning, Memphis in the 50s. This goes right into the weekend. It's cool and comfortable all the way to the Northeast. How about 10 degrees below average? Boston to New York and Philly, low and mid 70s on Saturday, even 60s from places like Cleveland over to Syracuse. David, it's comfy in the classroom after that. Back to you.
Lee Goldberg back with us again tonight. Lee, thanks as always.
I think I'm going to leave it there. I did have some space news. It was kind of cool. It challenges the standard model of astrophysics, which is kind of like, you know, the Big Bang and all of that. Just, you know, how we understand the fabric of reality. I'll know it by the thumbnail. Looks like galaxies in a fishing net. There it is.
This video is brought to you by Squarespace, an all-in-one platform for building your brand and growing your business online. This is a universe, not ours, but one remarkably like it. A cosmos filled with galaxies, stars, and worlds, all governed by the same fundamental laws of physics we know today. For billions of years, it stretches and grows as space itself expands and carries its galaxies ever farther apart. But in this universe, the balance of cosmic forces eventually shifts. Its geometry and energy content no longer drive it outward. Gravity begins to win. The expansion slows, halts, and then reverses. Space starts to contract, pulling everything back together. It approaches the brink of a singularity, a point where space and time as we know them would cease to exist. But instead of ending in an infinite point, something remarkable happens. Extreme quantum effects push back against gravity's crush. The collapse halts, rebounds, and bursts outward. From that rebound, a new universe is born, our universe. And in this scenario, the Big Bang wasn't the beginning at all. According to the standard model of cosmology, our universe began 13.8 billion years ago in an event known as the Big Bang. Space itself expanded from an extremely hot, dense state, and over time, gravity and physics shaped what we see today. This model, combined with Einstein's general relativity, explains some of the most important observations in modern astronomy. The faint afterglow of the cosmic microwave background, the vast web-like structure of galaxies across the cosmos, and the fact that the universe's expansion is accelerating, a phenomenon often linked to a mysterious force called dark energy. Yet serious questions remain. We still do not know the true nature of dark matter and dark energy, even though together they appear to make up about 95% of the total cosmic contents. But what if there is a simple explanation? An Occam's razor that relies solely on known laws of physics, avoiding the need to introduce speculative particles or forces. A team of scientists from the University of Portsmouth has proposed a bold alternative to the Big Bang theory, that our universe may have formed inside a colossal black hole within a much larger parent universe. They began with a straightforward question. What if our universe formed in the same way a massive star collapses into a black hole? To explore their idea, the team ran simulations looking for a model that could resolve some of the inconsistencies in current cosmology. To their surprise, they found that an exact, analytical solution describing the core principles of such a process already exists. In quantum mechanics, identical particles such as electrons or neutrons must each have their own space, as in they cannot exist in exactly the same state at the same time. This rule is called Pauli's exclusion principle. When you try to squeeze too many of these particles into a small region, the rule pushes back. That push is known as degeneracy pressure. The harder gravity tries to crush them together, the stronger this resistance becomes. This is what prevents the cores of white dwarfs and neutron stars from collapsing endlessly, and in some cases trigger a supernova explosion. In the team's model, the same effect works on a collapsing universe. As it contracts toward extreme densities, degeneracy pressure grows strong enough to counteract gravity's pull, stopping the collapse before a singularity can form. The result is a rebound, a bounce, that launches the universe into a new phase of expansion. To those inside the newly formed universe, this bounce would appear just like the Big Bang. Now you might say that bouncing universe scenarios have been suggested before. How is this different? Well, this theory works entirely within the known laws of physics, avoiding the need for speculative particles or unknown forces, and describes a purely gravitational collapse taking place inside a black hole. While we understand how degeneracy pressure works in white dwarfs and neutron stars, we have no direct observations of matter at the far greater densities reached after black holes form. But rather than assuming that collapse inevitably ends in a singularity where physics stops making sense, the team argues it is reasonable to think that quantum effects could prevent singularities from forming at all. And here's where it gets interesting. The model predicts that ancient relic objects, such as primordial black holes or neutron stars, survivors from before the bounce, could still exist in our universe. If found, especially in the early universe, they would be strong evidence for the idea. As you know, the James Webb Space Telescope has already spotted surprisingly old, massive galaxies soon after the Big Bang, which are hard to explain in the standard model, but easier if early black holes help them form. It is a controversial view, but the authors believe that challenging long-held assumptions is essential for scientific progress. Meanwhile, new WST observations of how galaxies spin across the universe may be pointing to the very same conclusion, that we are inside a black hole. Before that, let's quickly hear from today's sponsor, Squarespace, which offers the best tools for easy website design, with their choice of a website or domain. A new research has uncovered an intriguing mystery that the majority of galaxies appear to be rotating in the same direction. The lines formed by the peaks here allow us to identify the direction of the curve of the arms of the galaxies and consequently their spin direction. This is significant because in a truly random universe, galaxy rotations should be roughly evenly split between two directions. According to the study's authors, this unexpected finding, which contradicts existing cosmological models, may hint that our universe itself is inside a black hole. To understand this, we need to look at the physics of black holes. When matter collapses under gravity to form a black hole, it creates an event horizon, a boundary beyond which nothing can escape, not even light. Anything that crosses this boundary is forever lost to an outside observer. However, what happens inside the event horizon is still a mystery. This is where black hole cosmology comes in. Also known as Schwarzschild cosmology, it suggests that our observable universe might actually be the interior of a black hole within a larger parent universe. Now consider the Big Bang. The standard model tells us that the universe began as a singularity, a point of infinite density, just like the center of a black hole. If our universe is actually the interior of a black hole that formed in a larger parent universe, it would mean that the Big Bang was not an explosion in empty space, but rather the moment matter collapsed into a black hole, creating a new universe inside. This has another implication. Each and every black hole in our universe could be the doorway to another baby universe. This could also explain why the fundamental constants of nature appear fine-tuned for life. Because black holes that create stable universes may be more likely to persist and reproduce through this process. The scientists believe that this idea could explain several cosmic mysteries. For example, black holes are known to have immense entropy, which corresponds to the vast amount of information contained in our universe. Another factor that could play a role in this scenario is torsion. In extended theories of general relativity, such as Einstein-Cartan relativity, torsion is a property that accounts for the intrinsic spin of particles and can influence space-time curvature. Some theories suggest that this twisting effect of space-time could generate a repulsive force at extremely high densities, potentially preventing singularities from forming. If true, this could mean that instead of collapsing into an infinitely small point, a black hole could experience a big bounce where the core rebounds and expands outward, potentially giving rise to a new universe inside. The scientists continued by adding that rapid recoil after such a big bounce could be what has led to our expanding universe, an event we now refer to as the Big Bang. Instead of a singularity exploding from nothing, it could have been a rebirth from the core of a black hole in a parent universe. This theory would drastically change our understanding of cosmic origins, suggesting that the cycle of universes is an ongoing, self-replicating process. Another intriguing possibility is that the universe may have a preferred axis. Studies of large-scale cosmic structures suggest a certain alignment in the way galaxies are distributed and move, rather than being entirely random. This so-called cosmic anisotropy challenges the widely accepted cosmological principle, which assumes the universe is isotropic and homogeneous on large scales. If the universe does have a preferred direction, it could point to unknown physics at play, possibly related to the way our universe formed inside a black hole or how fundamental forces interact on the grandest scales. Moreover, the existence of ancient, massive galaxies so soon after the Big Bang challenges our understanding of cosmic evolution. But while the universe inside a black hole theory is tantalizing, there could also be a more pedestrian explanation for the unexpected observations. Maybe some earlier measurements of our universe are incorrect, especially the speed at which the Milky Way galaxy rotates. In any case, the universe is turning out to be far stranger than we ever imagined, and the uneven galactic rotations will likely prompt astrophysicists to reassess certain aspects of our understanding of the universe. What do you guys think? Let me know by dropping in your comments below.
When is a supernova too close for comfort? Will the USA's moon race against China accelerate a race towards a Mars base? How can we see the Oort cloud? And Q&A Plus, what do I say to space deniers? All this and more in this question show. It's time for the question show. Your questions, my answers, as always, wherever you are across my channel. If the question pops into your brains, write it down, I'll gather them up, and I'll answer them here. All right, let's get into the questions. Space infrastructure. If China beats us back to the moon, do you think the US and its partners will go all in establishing a base on Mars? Asteroids Ryugu and Bennu are related. A star tried to eat a black hole, and it didn't go well. Using moons to save fuel, and China tests its new human lunar lander. In Space Bites Plus, how climate change will impact satellite orbits. All this and more in this week's Space Bites. We have samples of 3 asteroids. Algorithm. On August 6th, China tested its new lunar lander for the first time. This is the Lanyue, and it looks very similar to the Apollo lunar module, the LEM, that we're familiar with. It has a descent module and then an ascent module that sits on top of that. The Chinese astronauts are going to be in orbit around the moon in their Mengzhou capsule, which was delivered separately. They'll get into the Lanyue. It'll go down to the surface of the moon. They'll get out. They'll do their mission. They'll get back in. They'll ride the ascent module back up into orbit. But it's much more massive than the original LEM was. While the LEM had just over 10,000 kilograms deployed to the surface of the moon, Lanyue is expected to do 26,000 kilograms to the surface of the moon. And so on August 6th, they did this test. It ran for about 30 seconds, and they tested simulating the descent, the guidance, the control, and the engine shutdown, which are a lot of the big key components of this. And of course, they've got a lot of practice with landing stuff on the surface of the moon, as well as flying ascent modules off the surface of the moon with all of the sample return missions. And so, the humans are just going to be bigger versions of sample return. And so this is tested here on Earth, but the plan is to then have this fly on the heavy lift Long March 10 vehicle, which is what they're building. They're expected to test that in 2027. And so now all the pieces are coming together for the Chinese mission to go to the moon, which is expected to fly by the early 2030s. Obviously, there's a lot to go into on this, so check out the story by David Dickinson. Not only can Webb explore the distant universe, study the atmospheres of exoplanets, it can study objects right here in the solar system. And astronomers were using Webb to examine the area around planet Uranus, and they discovered a 29th moon. So it's designated S2025U1. Who knows if it'll ever get a more interesting name. And the new moon orbits about 56,000 kilometers from the center and takes about 9.6 hours to orbit around it. So it's very close in to the planet. It has an almost perfectly circular orbit, which tells you that it probably formed in place and wasn't captured by some other interaction with a Kuiper Belt object. and it's about 10 kilometers across. So another new moon for Uranus. Thanks, Webb. And we've got a story about that by Evan Goff. All right, this is very cool. So NASA's Psyche mission is currently on its way to the asteroid Psyche. I know, every time I bring this up, it's totally not confusing. But Psyche launched in 2023, and it's expected to arrive at Psyche in 2029. And so we're about halfway through the cruise phase of its mission. And one of the things that NASA likes to do is have these spacecraft turn back and take a picture of Earth. We saw that with Voyager with the famous pale blue dot image. We saw that with Cassini with its own version of the pale blue dot. And other missions have done this as well. Beyond just giving you this incredible sense of perspective that everyone you've ever known and lived and loved is on that tiny little blue dot hanging in a ray of sunlight, it also is useful to test out the capabilities of the spacecraft. We know the color of planet Earth. We know the color of Jupiter. We know what Mars looks like. And Psyche has been able to take images of each of these objects, and then the mission controllers can use this to calibrate the science instruments on board the spacecraft, so that when it does start to approach its final target, asteroid Psyche, it will be able to take the best possible data. And there's a couple more targets that it can probably still take pictures of. You've got Vesta, you've got Saturn, and again, it'll arrive at Psyche in 2029. And check out this story by Evan Goff. I hope you enjoyed all of the stories so far. And of course, this is just a fraction.
All right, just wanted to end it with a little bit of space news. If you want to support the channel, like the stream and subscribe, and I will see you tomorrow. I'm going to play some RuneScape tonight. Peace.